It was not horror at death. Death was common, and the galaxy had seen countless tragedies. What horrified them was the spirit left behind, the refusal to break, the strength to face the void without fear. For most races, death was the end. But the humans had turned their end into a declaration. They had sent a warning carved in their last breaths, that even if their bodies failed, their spirit would not. The elders of the galaxy sat in their thrones, watching the images again and again. These humans had no fleets, no empire, no great power. They were small, fragile creatures. Yet in their weakness there was something terrifying, something even the most powerful races could not understand. The word spread through markets, through military barracks, through homes and schools. Children repeated it. Soldiers whispered it before battles. Leaders feared it. We are not afraid. We will endure. The galaxy had never seen such defiance from the weak. It shook them because it was alien, yet it was also familiar. Long ago, before they built their empires, some of them had once carried the same fire. But most had lost it, smothered by comfort, crushed by age. Humans, however, carried it still. The rescuers collected what little remained, fragments of data, broken tools, and the few bodies still tied together. They found no survivors, or so they thought. But what they carried back to their people was far greater than flesh. They carried back a story that would not die. And so the galaxy trembled, not because of war, not because of weapons, but because they had seen the birth of something dangerous, a spirit that refused to be broken, a message that even death could not silence. The humans had spoken, and the stars themselves seemed to shiver. The discovery of the human wreck spread faster than light. No ruler could stop it, no council could hide it. Images of the broken ship and the carved words appeared everywhere. On the glowing walls of great cities, in the quiet homes of distant colonies, even whispered in the darkest corners of space. Billions saw it, and billions felt the same chill. For many, it was not the sight of death that shook them. Death was common, and the galaxy had long grown numb to it. Armies had been destroyed, worlds burned, empires fallen, yet none of those left a mark like this. What unsettled them was the courage carved into steel, the humans' refusal to surrender, even as the void swallowed them. In the shining palace of the Eldari, the oldest race still alive, their council sat in silence. The silver-eyed elders had seen countless young species rise and fall. Yet as they watched the recording of human hands carving the words, one elder spoke softly, almost to himself. They do not break. Across the galaxy the reaction was mixed. Some races felt pity. The gentle Hrill wept openly when they saw the bodies tied together, unwilling to drift apart. They loved one another, they whispered. Even at the end they loved. Others felt mockery. The scaled Zarathi sneered, calling the humans foolish dreamers. They are weak. They die in the cold, and they call it courage. But even as they laughed, unease burned in their eyes. For deep inside they knew their own kind would never have done the same, and some felt fear. The Kreth warlords, who had ruled by terror for centuries, gathered in their fortress worlds. They replayed the words again and again. We are not afraid. We will endure. To them it was not a message of hope. It was a threat. If a fragile race, unarmed and unprepared, could face death without fear, then what would happen when they grew strong? When they built fleets, when they learned to master the stars? Such courage could not be broken by force, and no empire knew how to fight against it. On merchant ships, whispers began. Crews who carried cargo across the stars repeated the human words as if they were a charm. Soldiers on faraway outposts carved them into their weapons. Even children on distant worlds copied them onto school walls. The words became more than a message. They became a spark. Rulers tried to contain it. Some declared the humans a danger. Some demanded their planet be locked away, hidden from the galaxy before their spirit spread too far. But it was too late. The story of the humans had already planted itself in the hearts of countless people. For the first time in ages, the galaxy remembered what courage looked like. The empires, vast and ancient, had grown comfortable. They had forgotten the fire of their beginnings, the hunger that once drove them into the stars. Humanity, with nothing but fragile bodies and fragile ships, had reminded them, and it terrified them. The galaxy was horrified not because humans were strong, but because they were unbreakable. And in a universe ruled by fear, a race without fear was more dangerous than any fleet. In the halls of power, leaders whispered, They must be watched. They must be controlled. If they rise unchecked, none of us will stop them. But no wall could contain the story now. Across the stars, across every empire, the echo spread. We are not afraid. We will endure. And though Earth was still small, still fragile, the galaxy trembled at the thought of what humanity might one day become. The galaxy could not forget. No matter how hard rulers tried to bury the story, the words carved into the hull of that broken human ship echoed louder with each passing day. We are not afraid. We will endure. In the great council halls, the leaders of empires argued fiercely. Some demanded immediate action. Others wanted silence. But none of them could escape the truth pressing on their minds. Humanity had unsettled the balance of the galaxy. The Zarathi warlords struck the table with clawed fists. We must destroy them before they grow. They are reckless children. Today they carve words, tomorrow they will carve worlds. The soft-voiced Valen scholars shook their heads. You cannot destroy spirit. Even if you burn their world, their story will remain. Their courage has already spread farther than fleets. The Eldari elders remained quiet. They had seen countless races rise and fall, yet this was different. They remembered a time, millions of years ago, when their own kind had been young and daring. But that fire was gone. The humans had lit it again, and the Eldari were both afraid and hopeful. Meanwhile, whispers grew in the lower levels of society. In soldier barracks, recruits repeated the human words as a chant before training. In markets, traders carried small carvings of the phrase, believing it brought luck. On distant colonies, where people felt abandoned by their rulers, the words became a silent rebellion. No emperor, no king, no council could control it. The Kreth warlords, who ruled through fear, felt their grip weaken. Their soldiers began to ask questions. If humans are not afraid, why should we be? Fear had been the Kreth's greatest weapon, but against humans it seemed useless. And if the idea spread, even their own armies might stop fearing them. It was then that the galaxy realized the true danger. Humanity's power was not in weapons, not in fleets, not in numbers. Their power was in their spirit, and spirit spread like wildfire. A single human ship had died, yet their last act had shaken empires. What would happen when humanity built 100 ships? 1,000? The thought filled leaders with dread. Some empires sent secret agents to study Earth. They wanted to know what gave humans this strength. Was it their history? Their struggles? Their strange ability to hope even in despair? What they found unsettled them even more. Humanity had always been like this. On their world, they had faced storms, famines, wars, and still survived. They had risen from nothing again and again, refusing to break. The galaxy realized something terrifying. Humanity's story was not an accident. It was their nature. Meetings turned darker. Leaders whispered of blockades, of hidden plans to keep Earth isolated to delay their rise. Some even spoke of destruction. But deep in their hearts, they knew it would not matter. For every empire understood this truth. You can kill bodies, but you cannot kill spirit. And the human spirit was a storm waiting to come. On the streets of alien worlds, the common people began to speak of humanity with awe. They no longer saw them as weak children. They saw them as a race willing to face the void itself without fear, and that thought frightened rulers even more. For how could they control their own people when those people now carried human courage inside their hearts? The galaxy trembled, not because of what humanity had done, but because of what they might do. Not today, not tomorrow, but one day, and in that fear, a single truth grew clearer with every whisper. Humanity could not be stopped. When the rescuers searched the wreck again, they believed all hope was gone. The ship was silent, the bodies were cold, and the message carved into the hull had already told the story. But deep inside the broken vessel, hidden behind collapsed walls and twisted wires, they found life. 3 humans still breathed. They were weak, their bodies thin, their skin pale from lack of food and warmth. Their eyes were sunken, their voices cracked, yet when they looked at their rescuers, there was no fear. Only the same fire that had burned in the carved word. The galaxy was endless, full of stars, planets, and ancient civilizations that had lived for millions of years. Great empires stretched across the void, trading, fighting, and ruling over countless worlds. To them, the galaxy was familiar, something they had mastered long ago. Nothing surprised them anymore. But one day, everything changed. A strange signal echoed through the dark of space. At first it was faint, almost broken, like a whisper carried by the wind of eternity. It traveled slowly, bouncing from one relay to another, until it reached the great listening posts of the elder species. Technicians paused, confused. The code was not like any advanced race they knew. It was raw, clumsy, almost primitive, and yet it carried something more powerful than advanced encryption. It carried emotion. The councils of the galaxy gathered quickly. Every empire wanted to know what this strange cry was. Some believed it to be a trick, a trap set by a rival. Others thought it might be the last words of some dying world. But when the signal was translated, the halls of power fell into silence. The voice that spoke was human. It was not perfect. The words were cracked, trembling with fear, yet filled with a strange strength. This is Earth. We are not soldiers, not conquerors. We are explorers. Our ship is broken, our crew. We are dying. Please, if anyone can hear this, help us. The sound was unlike anything the galaxy had heard before. It was not the proud roar of a warlord demanding surrender. It was not the cold announcement of a machine calling for aid. It was the voice of fragile beings standing at the edge of death, reaching out into a void they did not understand. Some of the elder species laughed at it. To them, humans were reckless children, daring to step into the deep without wings to carry them. What foolishness, they thought. What arrogance to climb into a fragile shell of metal and fire and throw themselves into the unknown. But others listened more carefully. There was something strange about the tone, something that unsettled them. Most young species cried out in panic, screaming for mercy, cursing fate. But this voice, it was calm, desperate, yes, but carrying a thread of unbroken spirit. Even as it begged for help, it did not surrender to despair. The galaxy began to ask questions. Who were these humans? What kind of race sent explorers into the stars before their time? What drove them to risk everything just to touch the unknown? And most of all, what gave them the strength to face death without bowing their heads? The signal spread quickly, carried by curious traders and hidden channels. Soon, billions across the galaxy heard it. From the smallest colonies to the thrones of mighty empires, all listened to that trembling voice. Some felt pity, some felt unease, and some, deep in their hearts, felt fear. For the first time in ages, the galaxy was reminded of something it had forgotten. Not the power of fleets, not the strength of weapons, but the courage of the weak. The human signal ended with static, as if the ship had finally broken apart. But those last words remained like an echo in the minds of all who heard them. We are not afraid. We will endure. And in that moment, the galaxy, ancient, vast, and proud, stood very still. Something had arrived that none of them expected. Something small, fragile, and yet terrifying. Humanity had spoken, and the stars would never be the same again. The alien councils gathered in their grand halls, their voices echoing across chambers built of crystal, stone, and living metal. Representatives of old empires sat with heavy crowns and long memories, while the younger races watched silently, eager to learn. In the center, the signal played once more, a weak human voice. This is Earth. We are explorers. Please help us. The council was restless. The Zorathi, a species of warlords with scaled hides, hissed with amusement. Pathetic, one of them said. They enter the stars with toys and cries for pity. Let them vanish. But the Eldari, wise and ancient, leaned forward, their silver eyes full of thought. Do not be so quick, they whispered. There is something in that voice. Something dangerous. The room fell quiet. For even though the words were simple, the tone carried weight. The humans had not begged like cowards. They had not screamed like prey. They had spoken with trembling voices, yet still with dignity. It was not the sound of a race ready to die. It was the sound of a race that refused to. Many civilizations had reached into the stars before. They remembered what it meant to feel small in an endless universe. Most species were cautious, advancing slowly, building great walls of safety before daring to leave their homeworld. But humans, they had leapt into the void too soon, without shields, without protection, without wisdom. And yet they had dared. This thought unsettled the council. The Velan, a race of scholars, tilted their heads and said, No records speak of Earth. They are new. A young species, and yet they speak across the stars already. Should we answer? The question hung heavy. Answering meant recognition. Recognition meant responsibility. The galaxy did not like change, and humans were a spark that promised fire. Outside the council, the people of the galaxy debated as well. Merchants listened to the signal as they traveled between worlds. Soldiers heard it whispered in barracks. Farmers replayed it beneath alien skies. The word spread faster than any order, carried by curiosity. This is Earth. We are explorers. The galaxy had not heard such a claim in a long time. Explorers. The word itself was almost forgotten, buried under empires and wars. Most races no longer sought the unknown. They feared it, controlled it, or ignored it. But here was a small voice from a fragile world, reminding them of something pure. Reactions were mixed, some mocked. Children playing with fire, they said. They will burn and fade, some pitied. Let us send aid before they vanish forever. But some, the most dangerous of all, felt a deep unease. If humans had the courage to leap unprepared into the stars, what would they do when they were prepared? For courage was harder to fight than armies. Back on Earth, no one knew how far their cry had traveled. The broken ship drifted in silence, its survivors unaware that their words had touched 1,000 worlds. To them it was only a desperate hope, a final chance that someone, anyone, might hear. But across the galaxy, rulers who had never feared began to whisper. Could this small blue world become a storm? Could this fragile species who dared without power one day rise beyond control? The distress signal ended in static once more. But the silence it left was heavy, heavier than fleets of warships. For the galaxy had looked into the mirror of humanity's voice, and it had seen something dangerous, not strength, not technology, but spirit, and spirit was a weapon no empire could master. When the rescue fleets arrived at the source of the signal, they expected silence. Most believed they would find nothing but scattered debris, the last remains of a foolish young race that had dared to fly too soon. Yet what they discovered made even the oldest captains grow quiet. The human ship floated broken in the darkness. Its hull was torn apart, jagged like a wound left open by the void. Pieces of metal drifted slowly, spinning in the cold while flickers of dead lights blinked and died. It was a graveyard in space, but that was not what made the rescuers freeze. All around the ship, bodies floated, men and women, their fragile forms locked together. Some had tied themselves with belts and wires, others had reached out with bare hands, refusing to drift apart. Even in death, they had held on to one another. The crews of the alien ship stood in silence, their hearts heavy. Among their own species, the weak were often abandoned when disaster struck. Survival was all that mattered. But these humans had chosen differently. They had chosen unity, even when all hope was gone. One alien captain whispered, "Why would they do this? Why hold on when death had already taken them?" No one could answer. As the search teams moved closer, they found something more. On the surface of the broken ship's hull, words had been carved with shaky, bleeding hands. Deep scratches in the metal formed a message, raw and desperate, yet burning with defiance. "We are not afraid. We will endure." The moment those words were read aloud, silence fell across every channel. Even the cold machines recording the scene seemed to pause, as if the galaxy itself was listening. The rescuers transmitted the images back to their councils. Soon, across 1,000 worlds, people watched. The sight spread like fire. Everywhere, beings saw the humans clinging together in the void, their message carved into steel. And everywhere they felt the same unease. One of them, a woman whose hand still bled from scratching metal, whispered when asked why she had written the message. Her answer was simple. "We wanted someone to know we didn't give up." The rescuers stared at her, speechless. Most species would have surrendered long before. They would have cursed fate or cried out in despair. But these humans, broken and dying, had chosen to send a message not of weakness but of strength. Another survivor, his voice faint, added, "We thought maybe someone would see it. Maybe they would remember. If not for us, then for others." It was not pride in their words. It was not arrogance. It was something deeper, an unshakable belief that even if they fell, their spirit would stand. The rescuers carried the 3 humans aboard their ship, giving them food, water, and warmth. But the galaxy was not prepared for what came next. When news spread that there were survivors, the words of the living became more powerful than the message carved in steel. Every council demanded to question them. Every empire wanted to see for themselves. And when the humans spoke, they spoke softly, but their voices cut through the galaxy like fire through dry grass. "We are explorers," one of them said. "We wanted to see the stars, even if it meant we might not return." The councils were shaken. Most races did not risk such danger. They only moved when safety was assured, when the unknown had already been measured and controlled. But here were humans walking willingly into the void without guarantees. Without fear, the Valen scholars whispered among themselves. They seek knowledge not because it is safe, but because it is there. The Kreth warlords clenched their jaws. To them, bravery belonged only to warriors, only to those trained for battle. But these were not soldiers. They were explorers, ordinary men and women. Yet their courage was greater than armies, and that terrified them. When one council member asked the humans if they regretted leaving Earth, the woman shook her head weakly. "No," she said. "To see the stars even for a moment is worth the risk. If we died, then at least we died reaching." Her words spread faster than fleets. Across the galaxy, common people repeated them. On distant colonies, children looked to the sky with new eyes. On forgotten worlds, slaves and laborers whispered those words in secret. The spirit of humanity was no longer just a message. It was a living flame, carried in voices that could not be silenced. The rulers grew uneasy. They could not crush it, for to strike the survivors down would only make the story stronger. They could not control it, for the words had already escaped into every corner of the stars. The three humans, fragile as they were, became symbols of something greater than themselves. They were proof that humanity's courage was not an accident. It was who they were, and the galaxy realized the truth it had feared since the beginning. Humanity was dangerous, not because of their weapons, not because of their ships, but because of their hearts. The distress signal had ended long ago, but its echo still lived across the stars. What began as a cry for help had become something far greater, a story that no empire could silence. The three survivors were kept safe, yet their voices had already carried farther than they could ever travel themselves. Everywhere, beings spoke of humanity, not as weak children, not as reckless fools, but as something new, something different. The words they had carved into broken steel were now carved into the hearts of countless species. "We are not afraid. We will endure." On distant colonies, workers who lived under cruel rulers whispered those words at night, holding them close like a shield. Soldiers repeated them before battles, not caring if they fought for or against their empires. Traders painted them onto the sides of their ships. Even children who did not yet understand what fear was wrote them on school walls. The words had become a flame, and flames spread. Rulers trembled. In secret halls, kings and emperors spoke with dread. "They are too dangerous," some hissed. "If humanity rises, no chains will hold them." Others, wiser, shook their heads. "It is already too late. The idea has escaped. You cannot kill it." The Eldari elders, ancient beyond measure, sat in silence as they watched the story grow. One of them whispered to another, "Perhaps this is what the galaxy has been waiting for, a reminder that courage still exists." Meanwhile, the humans on Earth did not even know what they had done. Their people believed their explorers lost, unaware that their last message had shaken the galaxy itself. They lived their lives under the same sky, dreaming of one day touching the stars again. But far away, billions already looked to Earth with awe, fear, or hope. To some, the humans were a threat. To others, they were a beacon. To all, they were unforgettable. The survivors were asked again and again why they had held on, why they had tied themselves together, why they had carved those words when death was certain. One of them answered simply, "Because no one wants to be alone in the dark." The galaxy listened, and the galaxy wept. For all its power, all its wisdom, all its pride, it had forgotten such simple truths. Humans had remembered, and that was why they were dangerous. Empires could not understand how fragile beings could face the endless void with such unbroken will. They could not understand how death could be met with hope instead of fear, and because they could not understand, they feared. For in their hearts, every ruler knew the same truth. If humanity carried this spirit into the future, then no weapon, no army, no empire could ever truly defeat them. Humanity had entered the galaxy not with fleets, not with conquest, but with a message carved into steel and blood, and that message was enough to terrify the mighty. The legacy of the distress signal was not death but life, not weakness but strength. It was a reminder that even in the coldest dark, courage could burn brighter than suns. And so, across the stars, the echo remained. We are not afraid. We will endure. The galaxy had seen many things, wars, empires, destruction, but never this. Never a race so small, so fragile, and yet so unbreakable. The galaxy was horrified. The galaxy was in awe. The galaxy would never be the same. And somewhere on Earth, under a quiet sky, humanity still dreamed of the stars, unaware that the stars were already dreaming of them.